Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And oh my goodness, I have been in the inside. It is the topic of tonight, I think. I got up this morning and the first thing I started doing is taking notes. You guys, like in 15 minutes, I made 4 pages of notes and I went, oh my goodness, my favorite topic. We're going to go into it deep tonight. And you know what? In all honesty, I didn't come back to my notes. I didn't come back in even and read what I had written down. And I thought, oh my goodness, Cindy, you're going into your live tonight and you're not even prepared, giving myself a little bit of heck in that. I want to come in and I want to be able to express myself in my truth, in my understandings, and the kind of things that I got wrong in my life or I perceive that I've gotten wrong in my life. Also, as being a spectator and a student, coming into my own conclusions as to what went wrong, not necessarily who did wrong, though, of course, right? Being the person that I am. And I think for each one of us, in taking care of ourselves and looking out for our own safety, we do that, don't we? We judge, and anybody who says that they don't judge, I would say you're living quite an unsafe life. And it's funny that I say that because I am a true believer in riding the waves, in adapting and conquering, in living in the present. But I'm somebody who loves the past. And I recognize that it is in my past that has woke me up to the actuality of what I have created in my life. Some of it by my choices, some of it projected onto me. But even when it's projected onto me, I have choices. Each one of us have got choices. At any moment, we can snap out of it in just making one decision, one commitment to ourselves, right? For our own well being and create change in our life. And even if I didn't go back, I did this at 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, let's say 7:30 in the morning by the time I made my cup of coffee and everything and sat down. And in 15 minutes, it just kind of flowed out of me. And I thought just before I came live, oh, I better go over it if we're going to talk about change tonight. But change has been not just a powerful word in my life, it has been a catalyst of magnificence in my life. And I think for a lot of people, me included, at one point, we avoid change. And I think it's something in my notes. So maybe I'll just read each note. I think I have, or each point, I think I have about 15 points here, 10 or 12 maybe points here. And I thought maybe we go over it a little bit. Maybe I could give a little bit of perspective because change is so important. But in saying that we need to ignite change in our lives, we have to make sure that that word choice is taken into consideration too, because there is no choice directed by ourselves in making good decisions, in going off in directions where we want to go off. We don't want to be led like a herd of cattle, right? We don't want to be like an ant colony where there is no individuality, there is no me, there is no you, that we are just one of a billion, right? All made up the same. Each one of us is a unique, but sometimes the way we live, we're not unique in any way. And also, right, social media dictates to us what is cool and what's not cool, right? Like Nike. Nike runners, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the brand of Nike, but the way people go after that product, Nike, you would think that it was the most amazing, well put together product out there in the world, but it's just in the branding and it's just in the brainwashing, right? No disrespect to the companies. I'm just using it as an example, but it is the brainwashing in the advertising, right? In the brand, well, exactly that, the branding. I'm a brand myself here on my channel, but I explore the inside and the outside, and that's my brand. But nobody should take it as the be all to end all, the truth of all truths, because each one of us is an individual. It's only information that we get to pick and choose from. And if we're willing, right, we can move with it. We can play with it a little bit, experiment a little bit with it, right? And decide for ourselves whether or not to take it as a truth. I had to sift through so much information, so many content creators, so many thought leaders out there. And when I came to the end of it, right, in the end, I followed what I felt to be true. But how do I know what's true? I spelled something on my shirt. I just felt it. How do I know what's true unless I am out there making choices, right? And it's not enough just to make choices, but in those choices that we make, that's going to dictate the change that's going to come into our lives. And actually, that's not going to dictate the change in our lives, because when we make a choice, we have to take an action in it. We have to compound that truth that we just picked up. And whether or not we decided in the moment that that was it, that's the ultimate truth, or we want to just take that truth and feel it and play with it and experiment with it, right? Taste it and possibly digest it, right? But spit it out. If it's not for you, it's not for you. And it's in your right to pick and choose whatever is the truth for you, right? And whether that's Nike, it might be, but it might not be. It might have been just something that was forced down your throat. This is the truth. This is the way we've lived our entire lives. This is the way we've lived and understood for generations. But that doesn't mean that that's a truth. Just as an example, how many different religions are there out in the world? And most of them say that there is one God, and each one of them says their God is the true God, is the true God, right? And I believe that there is just one be all to end all that we all answer to, but because of our upbringings, because of our cultures, because of our language, because of the political atmospheres, because of, well, you could just use on what's going on in Iran right now. There's a gentleman I'm following online, and he says, if you were around in the 1970s, you would have thought Iran was just another tourist city, that everybody, nightclubs, mini skirts, right? They were hip and they were cool. And it was only in the change of the regime, is that the word? Okay, right? Never said that my pronunciation was absolutely perfect, right? But I'm dabbling my toes into these ideas, and these ideas, I get to choose whether or not they're going to be true. And it has to be in the evidence. If I'm going to believe anything, if I'm going to make a move in any direction, I want to have that wow, right? And I just have something instantly sink into me, and not sink into me because somebody said this is the way it is. I see you there, Tammy. I see you there, right? Not just to have it sink in because somebody said that this is the truth, this is the way it is, but to let it be a conversation, let it be the evidence, right? I want to see the evidence. If somebody told you to jump off a bridge, would you jump off the bridge? No, you're going to experiment, you're going to study, you're going to read about it. You want to see the evidence before you do something so foolish, right? Because any choice we make in the moment could be a foolish choice. It really, really could. Each one of us should be our own decision makers, right? But lots of times we're scared. Sometimes we feel we don't have that intellect or that education. Sometimes we think we don't have the bravery or the courage, right? Sometimes we need that group behind us to say, you got this, right? Oh, you're 100% right. You need to have that backup so that you can drum up that little bit of courage or that little bit of insight that might feel a little bit silly, right? So, we're going to talk about change and choices. So, change and choices go hand in hand, right? They have to, because if they're not, if change comes about and we don't have a choice in that, it's a projection, it's a rule, it's a dictation for us to follow in somebody else's suit, somebody else's idea, somebody else's dictation, right? uh, and understand, right, that we have to make those choices to promote change in our lives, right? If you're overweight and you want to lose weight, well, you have to make that choice to lose weight. It's just not even enough just to make the choice that you want to lose weight. You have to put that action, right, in that choice. And that's what's going to dictate the change that comes into your life, right? And sometimes we choose to quit our diets and we fall back and we beat ourselves up and we go, oh, I'm never going to do that again. You guys hear me all the time say, can't give up, right? Right? Yeah, feel bad for a minute, but just for a minute. But if that was your choice that you wanted to lose 30 pounds, then you've got to find a way, right? You have to find a way. You need to get up and brush your knees off, and you need to come at it in possibly a different direction, right? Attack it in a different way. Because if that's your choice, right, change is only going to come about through taking that action, right? Understanding like nobody's going to come to save you, right? And if you have cheerleaders standing behind you going, you got this, right? That's amazing. But for lots of us, the things that we want to change in our lives, these are personal things, right? Things that you're not going to shout out to the world, right? Though I have, right? That you'll just use me as an example in being a VLT addict, right? That's not something that I'm proud of. That's not something that I want to shout and express to the world, right? So I don't expect there's going to be people behind me going, "Oh, Cindy, you can quit. You got this," right? But if you make that choice and take that action, then maybe after 6 weeks or 8 weeks, when you feel you're coming through that difficult stage, that hump where we really do have that itch to get on the video lottery terminals and start gambling again, then maybe at that point that you can rally a little troop to just give you that extra boost just to cut over that hump. Because at that point, after 6 or 8 weeks, right, you've got a little pride in you that you made a choice and you brought some change into your life, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to stick that way, right? Life is a roller coaster, up and down, right? If we care for what we are close to, we share that information, right? Just to get that little bit of extra boost, but also not just that extra boost, but because we want to see the evidence. And even though you want to lose some weight, right? Maybe the people behind you, the people who are rooting you on, they want to lose some weight too. So now you have that opportunity to be the evidence for somebody else, so that possibly somebody else might want to make that choice and bring about some change into their lives, right? So if we care for what is close to us, right, we share, but only if these people are willing to choose to receive, right? Lots of times we're good. Don't worry about that. If you need me, I'm on the couch with the remote control, right? Because change is scary. Change is uncomfortable. So most choose not to change, right? And not just in choosing not to change, when they see that other people are changing, it makes them feel bad, because just because they choose not to change, it doesn't mean they don't want to change. It's just, it's scary. It's uncomfortable. It's hard, right? But you still choose to refuse, right? And then we push away, we attack, we demoralize, we destroy, we condemn, right? We control and we isolate, right? And we don't appreciate in what is actually good for us. We actually push it away. We actually just like, right? And we don't want that at all. And that's demoralizing for ourselves. And not only is that demoralizing for yourself, when somebody else is trying to bring about some change in their lives, it's demoralizing for them, because they don't understand why you have such a negative attitude for that, because you're doing something good and you're feeling good about that, but everybody around you is just like, you can't do it, right? There are better things to do. Come on, let's go to the movie and have popcorn, or let's go for dinner, or right? And just purposely, and this was something that happened in my life. I was the little fat kid all my life, and I was on diets, and then I was off the diets, and not just by my own choice, but just in that disillusionment of others who just wanted to yank on my emotions and in my um, confidence that I could make some change in my life by making some choices and applying myself. And, if you look back at some of those things that you wanted to accomplish in your life, then maybe you could see the little bit of sabotage that came from others. And usually that sabotage came from people that are around you all the time, people you cared about, people, that loved you, that you felt that they loved you. And yet, right, they were sabotaging you. And you guys hear me say all the time that I would just pick up that baton myself after a while, right? And I didn't need anybody to tell me that I was a chubby kid, or I wasn't smart, or I wasn't attractive, or I was good for nothing. I would just pick up that baton and I would be my own gatekeeper in that. I didn't need anybody around to watch me or demoralize me or make me feel bad, right? I did that to myself. And I wouldn't even understood that I had done that to myself because that was the past. Who wants to look at the past and all those difficult, sad, demoralizing, embarrassing, shameful moments that we have in our lives? None of us do. But so many of the answers are back there. And sometimes we actually have to go back there and we have to see things the way they actually are and not sugarcoat it because we cared for those people or we still care for those people. We don't want to be feeling bad or feeling negative about others because in the end we made those choices to quit on ourselves, didn't we? But we'd hate to even think that, even though we could quit on ourselves, that there was a little bit of branding in that, right? A little bit of projection in that, a little bit intent by others that we would feel that way. Misery loves company. Hurt people hurt people. We hear this all the time, you guys. We hear it all the time, but we don't take it to heart, right? Because we don't want to. We don't want to go in the past. We don't want to think ill will of the people that we care about or we want to care about us, right? As humans, we have free choice, right? And those other parts are just being dragged along for the ride because, right, in the end, Cindy makes those choices, right? And I have to reflect. I have to contemplate. I have to go for walks. I have to sit here and take in different perspectives and not just perspectives from anybody. I want to see the evidence. I want it from the experts, the people who really understand these topics so that I could better understand, so that I have options of making better choices and not just choices from the small bit of influence that's around me, right? When I say small, I meant, because we keep our groups, our in groups small, don't we? As highly sensitives and as empaths, we don't, our groups are usually not super, super large. They're usually pretty tight. And I have to say, I've been in part of groups. I've created these groups myself that were large and they're hard to juggle. And again, what you're doing is you're allowing more perspectives and more ideas and more projections and the more my way or the highway and right. And if you choose him, well, I'm out of the picture because it's me or him or me and her and right. And that's confusing, it's hurtful, and it opens up our eyes to how cruel the world could really be, and we can become disillusioned in that. Very grateful that I had a very optimistic attitude for the most part of my life. Not saying that I didn't have bad moments. I had lots of bad moments, lots of heartbreaking, depressing, frustrating, right? Demoralizing, right? These moments do come into our life, but that's life, right? These are the roller coasters that we ride, and we have to make hard choices. Otherwise, we're just going to be on that roller coaster up and down forever. And that's really hard on the system. When I say the hot system, I'm saying the whole of us, right? Mentally, physically, and emotionally. Without choice, there is no change. But if we don't choose to change and take action in that, there's no hope for growth or, in the end, an existence, right? And that leads to extinction, and that's something I'm adamant about. I love history. I tie a lot of what I do and a lot of those insights that I have. I tie it into our being as human beings. I'm creating the best human being I possibly can for myself. And it's hard, right? Because I love to be in contemplation. I love being a thinker. I love thought leadership. I really do. But I love history and I love Mother Nature, and right, there are so many interests in my life, and it's not a matter of spreading myself thin, but it's accepting myself for the person that I am, right? And that's the person that I am. Let me have a sip of my grapefruit juice. I hope your week is going good, Tammy. I really am enjoying the grapefruit juice. I've been on the grapefruit juice for a couple of weeks now. I've been really, really enjoying it. And the cranberry grape cocktail. I really like that one too. Um, uh, the gift to us is the catalysm of making a choice and creating change in our lives. You guys hear me talk all the time about the 360s and the 180s. Like, I would much rather be my own catalyst than, say, Nike or Donald Trump, or right, or the headline news being that catalyst in my life, and me making choices because, right, I'm kind of freaked out about what's going on in the world, or in the fact that it's easier to follow somebody else's idea for me than for me to follow my own ideas, right? And lots of times we don't want to do it, right? We don't like change. Change is uncomfortable, but it can be done in little teeny weeny bits. And maybe we don't avoid those 360-degree turns in our lives that life just yanks us around. But sometimes we can turn a 360-degree turn into a 180-degree turn. And sometimes in those small adjustments, in those small baby steps, those small understandings that we have, those small choices that promote change in our lives, sometimes it's just a click and it's not even painful. And all of a sudden you're going, oh, that's what that's all about, right? And that 360-degree turn that was just like, all excited to get you in the morning is just kind of a puff of smoke, and it's nothing because you were your own catalyst, that you searched out information, right? You did a little bit of googling, or you talked to some friends or family and asked questions, or there was something that you knew you just had to do, but because it was uncomfortable, because it was going to create something different in your life that you weren't quite sure what that outcome was going to be. And so it was just much easier just to lay on the couch with the remote control and just say, oh, maybe tomorrow. And I was that person. Oh my goodness, was I that person? Especially when it came to like my house bills and stuff, right? I would be like the the a fairy just sprinkling fairy dust all over the place because it would just be a little bit here and a little bit here and a little, and I would never be able to get on top of things. And in this moment where I don't have any sort of income to brag about, my bills are caught up. Like I'm caught up in my bills. And that's not to say I'm not going to fall behind again. But in that situation that I'm in right now, right, I am doing pretty darn good at making those difficult choices for myself. I'm not somebody who likes to part with my money. But at the same time, I'm not somebody anymore that wants to deal with the stress and the worry of how am I going to pay that bill? How am I going to pay for my glasses? How can I work this out? Right? How am I going to do my trip in September? And now that is one for me. I got some good news. I don't mean to trail off today, but my sister sold, we had a little tin fire station and a little fire truck from the 1920s, and my sister sold it for $300, and we paid 50 cents for this little toy. 50 cents we paid for it. So that all just goes into the funds for my trip that will pay for the gas and the groceries for my trip. But I'm still responsible to pay for the car rental, and I still have the camping spots to pay for, right? And I'm grateful I have a couple of things that are worth a little bit that I can, right, that I can put up, and possibly that's not a for sure. So there's always that weight there of, oh my goodness, I gotta buckle down, but it's in my choices whether to truly buckle down, right? And not be frivolous with my money, right? And to make good choices for myself. Because again, like I said, nobody's coming to save me. Nobody, right? I'm doing this on my own. I'm being responsible, and that's a big part of it too, because for the most part of my life, right? The roof over my head, the food in my cupboards, the bills being paid, those were kind of things that were being taken care of for me, but they made me weak. They made me irresponsible, and it made me feel shameful because I wasn't standing on my own 2 feet. And when you feel shameful, what do? You delve in deeper into those things that aren't good for you, like the gambling. And so, in my own choices, I've had to make some difficult choices in my life because I have to be the evidence, right? I have to represent what I'm sitting here and talking about. And that means that those things that aren't good for me, they have to go, right? And I've been doing pretty darn good because I tell you, when it came to compulsive habits, I was in there 100%. Like I was in there. And I would have to say, besides maybe some pink ice donuts and some sprinkles, I'm doing pretty darn good. But I'm doing that in baby steps, right? Because otherwise it feels like punishment. And, when you come from dynamic families, when you've had those upbringings where, it's the high hand or that demoralizing or do as I say, not as I do, or, just being neglected, right? And rejected and feeling like you're uncared for and unloved, that we have to be able to do things in small nibbles, in the baby steps, in the baby spoonfuls things. But I am that example that it can be done 100%, because if I just even go back a half a dozen years, I was a mess. I was in within a couple of days of actually becoming homeless over COVID, right? And I buckled down and I made some difficult choices, and yeah, they were difficult and they were scary, and I didn't have the resources or knew where to turn, but somehow, right? I allowed myself to listen, to sit in, to be a spectator and be a student and search out that help. And that doesn't mean, right, in asking for help, that doesn't make you weak in that. If you're willing to do the work, right, information is free, and people out there really do want to help us when we are down and out, because it does something for us too, right? It's part of why I come here as often as I do. It's because, just even in my own experience, in being that example that somebody could say, well, if Cindy could do it, I could do it too. Have at her and do a 10 times better job. Maybe you can take bigger bites out of the problems. Maybe you can make bigger choices and bigger steps and bigger movement than me. Maybe you can get there a lot faster than I did, right? But I'm going as fast as I feel I need to. I'm going as fast as I feel that I can, that I'm able to do in the moment. And when I say able to do, because we can all go faster, we can all go harder, can't we? But then again, it will feel like punishment, right? We'll feel like we're not treating ourselves well. And that will put us in a moment that we could make a different choice, like quitting on ourselves. And for myself, I just can't do that, right? If I quit in one thing, I'm going to call it a pivot, and I will be turning around and I will be doing something else. I will make a different choice and I will go in a different direction. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to the couch and the remote control. I don't even have a TV, but I use that as an example, right? Um, like I said, I didn't go over this before I came live tonight. I wrote it all down at like 7:30 this morning with a cup of coffee and didn't come back to it, right? Didn't come back to it. And I don't know why, but then again, these are the wrenches, and these are the hiccups that come into our lives, and it was in my choice. Right? I well, it didn't even come to my mind to go back into it, but I could have applied myself, right? I could have directed myself to make a choice and to make sure that I had this down pat, but I chose something different, right? Our kind meaning, what kind of choices we have made over our lifetime that have created action, contribution to humans that we are always becoming or not. Now, I don't get what I just wrote there, but I guess I'm just trying to say that we have to be kind to ourselves in that process, right? To make sure that we're not beating ourselves, we're not mush, do more, right? That we are taking into consideration our capacity, that if we need to do it in baby steps, right, little nibbles, that it's still going to get done. We always feel like we have to get it done yesterday. I think the priority is to get what is necessary done. And for me, that necessary, get those bills off of my back, right? If my bills are paid, then that's one less thing that I have to worry about. And that will help me to maybe make a different choice because now I'm in a comfort zone. I'm not worrying about house bills, that I can make a choice and a movement towards something else that might better myself, might better me in a way that I can be an example for somebody else, that it can be done. Oh, page number 3. I'm just kind of like, what do you call that? Speed reading a little bit. Um, this week, um, there's a lady that I listened to. She got a very high IQ, right? And she's very, very smart. She's an expert in what she does. Her name's Teal Swan, right? And she was saying that she had made the decision that this week, a lot of her topic that she is going to be digging into was going to be on relationships. And that's what gave me this idea that maybe I would talk about choices. And it has to be something that we are not expert about, but knowledgeable about, right? And something that we truly believe would make an impact for others. And I think this idea, and in the season that we're in, now is a moment that we could make some good choices for ourselves, right? And when I say choices, remember we got to put that action into those choices, because otherwise it's not going to promote any kind of change at all, right? Ideas are a dime a dozen, and that's a true saying there, right? We're all creative. We can think of these things off the top of our head, but unless you put it into action, nothing is going to move. Nothing is going to be created. There not no change, nothing. It's just going to stay the way it is, and then you're going to beat yourself up more because, right, you made choices and did absolutely nothing about it, right? You were creating, you were on a goal, you pumped yourself up, you were excited. And then, like that roller coaster, you crashed and you felt bad about yourself, right? Because you didn't keep your word to yourself. But if you make small changes, small choices, take the action and watch the change come into your life, right? Watch the change come into your life. That will give you the confidence that you can take on a little bit more, right? That you might get excited about it like I did, right? I'm excited about what I do here. It might not always show, but I'm really excited. I'm excited for myself and what I've been able to accomplish, though people might look at me and go, accomplish what? Well, I've accomplished a lot for myself in just understanding what I got wrong. And if you can understand what you've got wrong, if you're willing to take a look back there, right, at what went wrong, not necessarily what you got wrong, because a lot of it is projected onto us too, right? Some of it we're just carrying because somebody told us so. And but unless you look back at those moments and put yourself in those shoes again, and most likely it was something when you were a little kid, but if you put yourself back in those shoes as a little kid, but as the adult you are in the moment and really see it for what it is, then maybe you should have a little bit of compassion for yourself, a little bit of understanding for yourself, and not worry so much about how big the bite has to be, how big the choice, how big the change has to be. You can make that choice to make a big change, but the action can be small actions, right? And just as you get comfortable in those small actions, and you'll notice those actions are faster or bigger. And the next thing you know, you've completed the prerequisite for the next lesson that you never ever thought that you would be able to imagine that you could achieve, right? That you wouldn't even be at the doorsteps of a possibility that you would have a chance to even do a little bit of work on it, right? It's like I say all the time, like, you can decide that you want to win the gold medal in high diving at the Olympics. But if you've never swum before, you can't just say I want the gold medal and expect that you're going to enter into the Olympics and you're going to win that gold medal. No, it's going to take a lot of practice, right? And if you're going for the top of your field, well, then there's a little bit more in what you got to do besides just making the choice, right? And just making a little. You can't really do it in baby steps at that point, because now you want to be the expert in that, right? So then you have to do even more work. You have to do that practice every day, right? um For myself, as much as I detest, hate, dread, fear, or feel the heartbreak in the catalyst, being the human being, soul even, that I am, I appreciate the catalysts that make difficult and often brave choices that in the end just have to happen. So lots of times, right, we don't initiate that change. Like I said, those 360s and 180s, they just come into our lives. But those are the best time to make choices and create change in your life, because it's difficult anyway. Like, if I've got a broken leg, then just let all the misery in my life hit me all at the same time, that by the time my leg is feeling better, then I can just go off and do what I need to do and not worry that I'm going to get hit again, because I'm just dealing with everything all at once, because I understand, right? The terrible can only last a certain amount of time before the sun's going to shine again. And that's a truth. I find that to be true so often. So when I'm down and out, like, give it all to me, right? Life is miserable, life is painful, life is frustrating, life is heartbreaking. Let's just get it all done now, right? And I will just take little bites out of everything on occasion. When I just can't take any more of this problem, well, then it's just not the couch and the remote control. I've got all these other problems I'm dealing with. Let's just switch it over here and create some change, right? Choose to work on another aspect. And again, I think this is why I have so many interests, right? That I'm not just solely focusing on the inside. I focus on the outside too, and I'm multifaceted in my interest in history and metal detecting and magnet fishing and mother nature and RVing and camping and going for walks and bike riding now because I got a new bike. Like, you know, and it's because if I get bored with this, or this gets to be too much and I get heavy and kind of, oh, I can't do this anymore, right? And so instead of just sitting in the chair going, oh, I can't do this anymore, well, no, I got other things I got to do, right? Other interests, other things that can I can make a little bit of movement in through my choices and still get ahead of the game, rather than just saying, oh, let's just take a break, right? And we need those breaks too, right? But I kind of, because I was brought up on the reward and punishment kind of system growing up, I I don't really punish myself anymore, to be honest, maybe in my own self sabotage, right? That there is punishment there. But in that rewarding, well, my September trip, no matter what, whether I accomplish or I don't accomplish, that is a reward for just being the person that I am. But in that, there's goal setting, right? I have to move towards those things because if I don't put any action in it, my trip in September is just not going to happen, right? Because it's going to be in my choices that I create this magnificent change that I want to come into my life. And each one of us, right, get to make that choice or not, right? You can go with the flow and be that ant in that ant colony, right? We could all set up ducks in a row and just follow suit with the person in front of us, or we can let somebody else dictate to us what our thoughts should be, what our actions to be. And when they're not in a good mood, they'll just bring you down and make you feel terrible just so that they can feel better. And who's that serving? That's not serving you, that's serving somebody else, right? Okay, let's just go to the last one. Um, we live in a world that's always evolving. And a big part of the history is knowing that we, right this moment, are going to be history, right? In the future, people looking back, they're going to look at us as part of that history. And we have to take accountability, for how we're raising the next generation, right? That we're making some good choices, but we have to understand the children are still listening to the adults. And even if those adults aren't making good choices, right, we have to be able to consider the kids, right? We have to consider that in order for humans to be able to evolve, to not go extinct, that we're going to have to take care of, right, those kids, because it's true, right? They are the leaders of the world in the future, and they will be looking at us in the past, that's in the present right now. And what are they going to think of us, right? We've made some really poopy mistakes, but every generation going back for thousands and thousands and thousands of years have made some poopy decisions, right? We spent a lot of time focusing on what we got wrong. It'd be kind of nice if we could focus on the things that we did get right. And if we can focus on the things that we got right, maybe it can be part of that patterning that we want to do the right for the future moving forward. It's why I don't worry so much about the catalysts going on in the world, right? Because in that adapt and that conquer, we learn, don't we? We learn about survival, we learn about being resilient. And I think in the world that we live right now, things are a little bit too easy, right? And you don't want it to be so easy that that extinction just comes up behind us and just, right, we're gone, poof, we didn't even know the possibility that it could even happen, right? We didn't even cross our minds, and then bang, it's there, and we weren't prepared in any way for it, right? So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Let's just grab a card. Oh my goodness. Like I said, I could have really gone in and just been a little bit cleaner. I even think I missed quite a bit of it, about riding the waves and adapting and conquering. It's a big part of that change that moves along. But that change is usually dictated by the crises that we're in the moment. But if we can be our own catalyst, right? If we can make some choices and, put that little bit of effort into it, that we can create something that's a little bit better, right? Maybe not better for the whole world, but better for ourselves. And, in doing something better for ourselves, somebody's going to notice that, right? And even if you don't think that you're an example for somebody, you just might end up being that example for somebody. Okay, you guys, we'll leave it at that. I'll come into my live. Okay, you guys, let's just grab a card. It might be pertinent for tonight. It might not be. Creation is a collaboration of a desire and an action, right? That's pretty amazing. I really like that, because we are all the creators of our own world. But being a creator, it means that we have to make some choices, sometimes some difficult choices, right? Creation is a collaboration of a desire and an action, right? We want to make a better world, right? We have to collaborate with ourselves, right? Nobody's coming to save us in trying to create the best human being we possibly can. And in being that example for others, that's all that we can expect to do for ourselves, right? And that does, mean that we have to make some difficult choices in that. But to know that we have it in us, that we can be our own catalysts, right? And not just our own catalysts, but our own collaborators, right? Oh, yeah. And be our own collaborators in that, and right, create something amazing, something so amazing that somewheres in the future somebody will look back at this present moment, which is in the past at that point, and say, oh my goodness, we should have started a little bit sooner. Okay, you guys, it's going to be my good cheer. Let me just get out this notification and say goodbye to everybody. I hope everybody has a great night. Hello, Eugene. Thank you so much for popping in. You guys, I hope you have a great night. If you get a moment, Saturday, she's going to go deep. Teal Swan, she's going to go deep in talking about relationships. If we're going to talk about creating change in our lives right now, that might be a conversation I think that would serve all of us really well in working on some of those relationships in our lives. But the most important relationship you got to remember is the one that we have with ourselves. Okay, you guys, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.